All right, the second Howard Miller World Clock came in, and the scroll, which is the area that I was most concerned about, is probably the worst I've ever seen. If you look here, every single hole in there is ripped open. So, those are all supposed to be sprocket holes. I ended up cutting the scroll just because I have to, if I'm going to try to resurrect this and kind of see it better on the back. But not only is all of this stuff supposed to be, longer, every one of the flaps is, all the holes have to be redone here. So I'm going to make an attempt at trying to, realign it and, cover it with like 2-inch packing tape, which is stronger than, masking tape or anything like that, and just kind of make a band here on the back. I try to get rid of the wrinkles, the stretch marks, and, try to put this back, stretch it back. I'm going to use some tape to tape it down to the counter so that it, get it as close as I can. And redo those flaps from underneath, try to get it. But working on the back side like this with, cut the scroll the long way, those actually are easier to repair with a piece of tape than all of these tiny little things. But I don't give it a high chance of success. But my second Howard Miller World Clock came, and here is the scroll that was inside, and it is in very sad shape. This is the back side. Every single hole is ripped out. You can see how it's, kind of collapsed and creased. This is going to be fun. I'm going to have to try to tape it down, straighten it out, and then I'm going to put like a 2-inch piece of packing tape on the back. I can go higher than in the front. You'll see the numbers are actually down here, the time numbers and things like that. So try to avoid putting tape down there, but on the back side I can go wide. And I'll put a big strip of stronger than normal, masking tape. I wouldn't use it. Use a packing tape, which will be a little stronger. And then cut out every single hole by hand and just see what I've got. But that's what I was afraid of. This could be a problem. So, scroll repair 101. I think if you look at the preview, I'll press place on the previous video that showed just how torn up this was. If you look close, every single hole was ripped out. So here's what I've done. I've cut the scroll vertically so that I can lay it out flat. And I taped it down to my kitchen counter. And I used this reinforced fiberglass tape. First of all, I used blue tape to, cut the corners and then stretch it so that it was even, so that was the same length all the way through, because there was a lot of, puckering and things like that in here as well on this, 1.5 or whatever it is. So what I've now done is I've stretched the paper as much as I could, and I've put down, obviously here's a leftover piece of the blue tape that was holding it stretched. Repairing this seam at the end is actually quite easy. It's easier to repair something like that than it is all these individual holes. So what I'm going to do, I believe, is on the other side it's printed, and it's printed down pretty low, almost to, just a little bit above the holes here. So I don't know that I'm going to use the fiberglass tape because that'll show onto the numbers. I may end up using this other packing tape. It's a little thinner, but it's clearer. And yeah, you might see a little gloss on the numbers that are down low, but I want to keep stretching out this bunching that's in here, this gathering that and then even some rips and things like that. I want to kind of capture. I don't want to not capture that and only do the bottom inch, but I want to have another side of tape touching this fiberglass tape, and then I'm going to go through with my get out a rum and coke and cut every hole out in this scroll. You know, kind of where it should have been, and you know where there's a missing piece of paper, I'm going to leave that as tape and just kind of make a rectangular square hole. This is about a 3/8 inch hole. I put a 1/4 inch. You can get a square punch, you know, a paper punch, but a 1/4 inch is a little too small. So maybe actually I can look and see if I can find it. It'd be nice if I could hole punch in one pass, you know, all 4 corners square, rather than cutting it with the X-Acto knife. I might look on eBay for that. But anyway, getting too long, but scroll repair 101. Trying to get this resurrected. We're gonna, you know, I couldn't hurt it any worse than it was. So, all right, I flipped the scroll around, and you can see how close the time scores are to the holes on this side. So I'm going to basically take from here and then let the clear tape run wild off the end. I use this blue painter's tape. I didn't mention this on the other side, but this is, you know, easily removable and peel back. So as I start putting down the new strip, I will be taking these off. But it helps keep the scroll flat and tight. And actually, I just noticed there's a wrinkle here I can push. So I want to, you know, loosen these blue tapes up and get all the wrinkles out, all the stretch out of it, so it's, you know, perfectly as flat as I can get it. And then we're going to put down this, you know, overlapping on this first set of times. We're going to use the this clear packing tape. Better than Scotch tape, but not as strong as the fiberglass, of course. Anyway, wanted to kind of give you that before it all disappears and the blue tape comes off the bottom edge. And I didn't mention that before. So, I use this block to hold the tape up on one end, and then I stretch it and I start it on this end, and I start putting it down and peeling these blue tape pieces off. You know, I've got 2 left here, and I'm right about here as far as, you know, adhering. I've got it lined up so that it's, you know, it's got this last time, it's covering up this last set of times. But anyway, I wanted to show you that because it's hard to explain, you know, kind of how I kept it taut and kept these on as long as possible. These little, pull down things, you know, make sure it keeps this nice and tight. Anyway, I'm going to finish this up. So there we have it. I have put the packing tape, the clear packing tape up. It starts, where is it? It's hard to tell. Basically, you know, I took this first line of time and I let it run, and then I cut it off here. So it ran wild. And then I pressed it all down, and you'll notice that there's some salvage, some, you know, excess on the front here, which is what I want, because the back end's got the fiberglass tape, and I want that to be as flat as possible, because that was what will ride on the spindle and the cogs, you know, and that has to be, you know, an accurate length for it to keep accurate time. If there's, you know, some extra bubbles or, you know, extra paper on the outside here, that's on the outside of the spool on the ends. So it shouldn't affect any kind of timing or, you know, length of the scroll, that kind of thing. So yeah, but, you know, you saw all these that were, you know, they're all were ripped. So I'm going to look to see if I can find a square hole punch that I could do these in one pass. Otherwise, you have to score, you know, the front, the top, and the bottom, left and right. So and you make them bigger than the actual spindle. I don't have the spindle here, but the little cog, the little peg that sticks through, is not this big. So it's not like they all have to be perfectly sized. It's important, I think, to get the leading edge, because the scroll moves in this direction on the front, but it goes around a spool. So basically it's moving in this direction on the back side. And you see the numbers on the back side because it's two-faced. I mean, you see the face. But when you're looking at the back of the clock, the numbers will be moving this way. So this leading edge here is the important one. You know, at the top and the bottom and the trailer, as long as there's big enough space for it to, you know, for the cog to get through without binding up or anything. So we shall see. But it's looking a lot better than it was when I took my first picture. So we'll try to splice these all together, and I don't know when I'm going to get back to doing the next thing on this. Got some other projects, and this is time consuming to make all these whole adjustments, and we'll see how it goes. And obviously I have to put the the vertical splice back in, get that back together. But everything else on this, the top and the everything else, and even the crinkles that were in this seem to have behaved. I worked on a scroll once and I thought, well, I should use heat. That's a bad idea. So this kind of tape with heat just shrinks, and I ended up with a real mess. I'm using that scroll in a test clock, but I don't think it's going to last. This might be salvageable. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Cut it up and gotta go through and make sure that all this tape, you can kind of see when you press down, sometimes there's some where they haven't adhered, and all these lines are from the fiberglass tape in the back, so I can kind of see that. Anyway, too long, but progress on repairing the scroll. And I think with the tape that's in the back, that's basically pretty wide, and then this tape that takes the bottom time, I think I've covered most of the damaged areas, contained them, sequestered them, if you will. And my sacrificial tape pile did its job. Thank you very much. Anyway, hope you're enjoying the series. Stay tuned for what's next on the Howard Miller World Clock Resurrection, number 2. All right, little update on the paper scroll for the World Clock. This is the one that was a total disaster. Every single hole was ripped out. I've gone through and I've taped it in the front and the back. I'll show you the back in a minute. It's kind of easier to see in the back. But yeah, it's still a mess. I mean, there's paper folded and things like that in the front. But on the back, which is where the there's a spool and there's a cog gear at the bottom that's going to go into all these holes, it looks a little bit better. You can see all the rips, but this is fiberglass tape, so it's got fiberglass running through it. So I believe that will keep it together, so to speak. And it's worth a try. And I wasn't going to hurt it any more than it was, but obviously I have to make it a scroll again and repair this. This was the manufacturing seam that I reopened, if you will, and I will have to reconstitute that and then put it on and see how it works. But I wanted to give you an update. This is about the best I could do. Will it be enough? Let's find out.